Your voice is not.
Check, check. Hello, hello. Guys online, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Yeah,
Yes.
okay, good. So fundamentally, at the end of sort of a very difficult viva, the examiner told me that Nagaraj, you passed. And so I was very happy. This was my last.
Sir, it's not audible.
Sir.
We are not able to hear you.
Sir, online we are not able to hear you.
Hello, hello.
Good. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. You're audible now.
Yes, sir.
Audible? But what happens if I move around?
Yes, sir. Now it is audible, sir.
Clear? Okay.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Sorry about that. Yeah. So, right, I was talking about, staying in an exalted state of happiness and so on and so forth. And then there was a family outside who said, we have come here to Bombay, we don't have money. Can you lend us some money? So since I was very happy, I sort of fished out my wallet and gave them in 1995, 500 rupees, which was a lot of money. Yeah, it's pretty decent now too, but in 1995, 500 rupees was a lot of money. And then I reflected back that had I not been so happy, I may not have given them that kind of money. Anyway, that money I never came back to me, although the family said we'll send it to you once we go home to Nashik or wherever. Yeah. So the fact of the matter is that moods and emotions affect our decision making largely, and you need to be careful. At least you need to be cognizant of the fact that decision making is affected when you're extremely happy or you're sad. So, so this is a professor from Harvard, and she did a recent study. Interestingly, it was a study across several hundreds of leaders. And Linda Hill says that most leaders told her that the skills that they're looking for in employees today are really not your technical skills. Yeah, they really don't care about how well you code. Of course, you need to code, or you need to be able to market or sell something and so on and so forth. But they're looking for something really important, that is adaptability. How adaptable are you to a given situation? Yeah. How quickly can you adapt to a changing scenario? How curious are you? Or is your brain dead? You're just going through the motions. You're not curious at all. How creative are you? Can you create something new? Can you innovate? Are you comfortable with ambiguity? Ambiguity is a situation where things are always volatile. So tomorrow they say, all of you have to come back to office, or say, don't come to office. Can you adapt? So many organizations went down during Corona because they were not comfortable with ambiguity, and they were not very adaptable. And then finally, the big elephant in the room that we all seem to ignore, are you digitally literate? Do you understand the digital transformation that is hitting us? Many jobs may disappear actually in the next 5 years. They say many low-level law jobs where they're doing clerical stuff might disappear. Many low-level bank jobs may disappear. Many low-level IT jobs may disappear forever. Yeah. So, do you understand digital literacy and what is happening in the world around you? So this was, I thought I should put it up there to make you aware that while many of you think that you are technically very good, and that should stand you in good stead, not necessarily so. Many leaders are saying, we want people who have these 5 things in large measure. So if you're digitally illiterate, please find ways to make yourself digitally literate, at least understand what's happening. Yeah. And then be comfortable. How do you train yourself to be comfortable with ambiguity? I don't think you also understand the word ambiguity very well. Maybe because you have had such settled lives, right? Ambiguity. So for example, people in the armed forces understand ambiguity well. So you have to make, as a young guy, say of 22, 23, you have to make decisions very quickly on the run. You don't have somebody to reach back to. Please tell me, what should I do next? And the ground is changing rapidly from underneath your feet. So, comfortable with ambiguity. How creative are you in coming up with solutions which may not have been there before? And so if you have to do all that, you need to be curious. You need to understand, or you need to have knowledge which is good enough, give you the critical mass to make those decisions. And of course, how adaptable are you? What is adaptability?
Adjusting to change.
Adjusting to change. What else? Acceptance. Very good. Acceptance. Very good. Acceptance. Yes. What else? Flexibility. Flexibility. Yeah. So, just to give you an example from my own life, when I decided to switch from being a captain to being in fact, I didn't join as dean. I joined as a lowly assistant professor. And in the year, say, 2007, I sort of gave up a really high-paying salary, and it dropped to 24,000 rupees a month. Yeah, I was hitting about 2.5 lakh of rupees a month those days in 2007. It's a lot of money, huh? Yeah, and it dropped suddenly from 2.5 lakhs a month to. I approached the B school. They said, look, you can join us. We don't know really what you can do. You say you're a captain and so on and so forth. We talk about ships. We're not sure what you can do here. The best we can do for you is pay you. So he asked me actually, what is your last drawn salary? And what a heart attack. So he said, no, this is not possible. We can pay you 24,000 rupees a month. I said, fine, good. Sounds interesting. Adaptability is important. And it's been a wonderful journey since 2007. Making assistant professor, associate professor, professor, assistant dean, associate dean, dean, and so on and so forth. But then I look back and say that the reason why it happened is adaptability. Are you able to adapt to something new? Right. So let's deep dive into what are emotions and moods. So emotions and moods come under a broad umbrella, which is called affect. Emotions are more short and sharp. You feel anger for a short while, and then it is a deep anger, or if you feel happiness, or you feel, sadness, or whatever, or you feel jealous. Somebody has a Lamborghini. I am driving a Maruti 800, and jealousy is a very common human sort of feature. And then you have moods. So moods is often general and unclear. You're not sure why do you have I just feel I'm not in a good mood. There's a sense of all of you, Sunday afternoon, maybe now it's a little less, but Sunday afternoon, your mood is not very good, right? Why is that? Monday you have to go back to office. So that's a general moody feeling that it starts setting in from Sunday afternoon. Now, because you have to come to the class, it's all right, I think. It's better to be at work than to be in the class. But so it's a relative mitigation. But moods are more generic, they're longer lasting, and they might get created because of a emotion. So you're really angry, you fought with somebody on the road, and that went away, but it translated into a generally feeling of disquiet and a bad mood. Yeah? So what are some emotions that are understood across the world? If you either go to Japan or you go to, say, the United States, what are some emotions that are well understood, very common? Anger, fear, sadness, happiness, disgust, and surprise. It's not as simple as that. What could be a problem? What could be a problem? Just think about it. Suppose any of you are vegetarians here? Only two. Everybody else has non-veg? Okay, so all of you say go to Shanghai and you landed there and your Chinese friend invites you to dinner and he serves a dish and then you ask him, what is this dish? And he says, it's a snake. First feeling that comes across is a revulsion or disgust. Is it disgusting for the Chinese? No. Therein lies the problem. So many of these are culturally driven. They are impacted by national culture. So for example, you might go to, say, Australia, where the bar opens up at 3 o'clock on a Friday afternoon, the office. Yeah, you go to Australia, the bar opens, you can have a drink, and then you can all migrate to another bar, and so on and so forth. Yeah. Is that possible to say in Infosys? Open up a bar. So Narayan Murthy will have a heart attack. Yeah. So are the Australians not right and are we correct? Not necessarily. So culture, hopefully you will read more about culture. Maybe just remind me, I'll show you how you can compare one country's culture. What is culture, by the way?
The cult they are following maybe.
What is that?
Practices.
What is practices? Set of practices, okay.
Particular belief and practice.
A particular belief and practice, very good, okay. What else?
Carrying forward the old culture to the, old days practice to the present.
Okay. So culture generally comes from the shared experiences of our, I think we talked about in the last class, of our ancestors. Yeah. And practices that they have. For example, why do Indians respect a cow? There's no clear answer. Because my grandfather told me. Right? It's a cultural thing. Why do you do a namaste? Have you thought about it? Where does it come from? Like a Western guy does a handshake. Handshake is not a very Indian thing. Culturally, we do a part of it's an artifact of our culture. So nationally, cultures again, no right and wrong, but the countries are different. What differentiates them is their culture, and then from their culture, their value systems, and so on and so forth. Yeah, but remind me, we must find out how to differentiate India, Australia, United States, China, and so on and so forth in real technical terms. What is the difference between these countries in terms of culture? Right, and then moral emotions. So the problem also lies in the morality of situations. So, for example, how many of you would put your parents in an old age home? It's a moral decision. If you go to the Western world, they find it strange that you want to live with your parents even if you're 50 years old. Yeah? Again, there is no right and wrong. These are moral. Opening a bar in an office at 3 o'clock is not a moral decision. You might find it strange. You must be a little careful, because when you have strong moral anchor points like this, I won't drink. I won't drink, and then you go and join an organization like this, where they open up a bar at 3 o'clock. What do you think, Chandrakala? It's a good idea to open a bar in the office. We can have fun and so on and so forth. Many people don't take that charitable view. I had a student once who used to complain all the time that, sir, they're opening the bar at, they take us for a drink on Friday evening. All ladies are supposed to drink. So to be careful, you might actually land in trouble. And sooner than later, she got kicked out because she couldn't sort of, become a part of that organization's culture. You don't have to drink, but you need to participate. You can't say, I won't come, and then look bored and then stare at everybody and so on and so forth. Yeah. So culture is a very important thing, and you will realize it as you go along. The different organizations have got different cultures, and they sort of have moral implications. How people look at. So you may or may not like on a screen. You might like the heroine wearing a pair of jeans, but your wife, you may not like it. So that's a moral decision you are making. Yeah. And things like that. So you can actually give several examples. Anybody can give me an example of sometimes the moral hypocrisy of human beings. It's fine for somebody else, but when it comes to me, yeah. So a lot of Indians find it strange that America has anti-abortion laws. For a developed first world country, how can they pass such a law when they say also that, and they lecture us on human rights and things like that? Yeah. And when they say that women do not have a right to decide whether they can have a baby or not, is very strange. So again, that's a moral decision. Okay. So right. So like I said, the fundamental reason why you are sitting in today's class is that emotions and moods are deeply impacted by, decision making is deeply impacted by emotions and moods. And there are two types of decision making that you can make. One is thinking. The thinking is you make a cold, calculated decision. Yeah? You data driven. Say you're going to get, I think I raised this example in the last class. You're going to get married, and you have to decide now whether XYZ girls are good for me or not. How do you start? You open an Excel sheet and see what are the assets of your potential father-in-law. And then you try to decide whether some of those assets will devolve to you or your wife down the line. Maybe you could also throw in how old your father-in-law is, when will he how long will he live? What are the chances? This is a thinking decision. This is a cold, calculated decision. Or you can say, I just like this girl. I mean, I feel very comfortable. something triggers in my head that we can have a wonderful life. And I think several of you told me that you use both strategies to sort of come with whether you want to sort of, how do you make a decision? Whether it's an intuitive decision that you make on the run, or whether you think about it deeply. Yeah. So several of you said you use both. Yeah. But both are affected by your emotions and moods. So do emotions make us ethical? Again, what is ethical? Ethical. So ethics again are human created. What is right and wrong? What is sort of what you think is right and wrong, unfortunately. So ethics is also culturally deeply impacted, and so for example, the Emperor Ashoka in 200 odd BCE said that you should not slaughter animals indiscriminately. He said that about 2000 years ago. It doesn't make any, and he said it's ethically wrong to slaughter. It's not correct. If you talk to the Chinese, they don't buy the story. So they have a different set of ethics. Yeah? So do emotions make us ethical? This is on moral questions, emotions questioning the previous beliefs that emotional decision making is based on higher level cognitive processes. Our beliefs are shaped by our groups. So yeah, so not necessarily. Yeah? Your sort of emotions may or may not make you more. So some of the most unethical people are people who are well educated. Vijay Malia, Nagaraj are all good examples. You had organization called Enron. I don't know whether you've heard about Enron. Enron was the father of all scams, which broke in the 1990s. It was supposedly one of the biggest, most innovative and creative organizations till a scam broke. There is a case study which you will do, hopefully well. And it had two people. One was the son of a padri, pastor. The other fellow went to Harvard Business School for his, and these turned out to be the two biggest crooks who defrauded several hundreds of thousands of poor and middle class Americans who lost their livelihood because they had invested in Enron. And in fact, very interesting story of how the judge, when he was sentencing Jeffrey Skilling and Kenneth Lay for what they had done in Enron and the fraud they had committed, he was talking about a jail sentence of 10 years or so on and so forth, and a fine. And just before he sort of passed his decision, there was a lady and her mother, old mother, who stood up and said, "We have something to say because we have invested in Enron." And he said, "Go ahead." And that old lady said, "It is because of these two people that we have now been reduced to living in Central Park in a tent." And the judge actually gave them a 35-year sentence in jail. Both those fellows, one has died, the other one is still in jail. But just think about it. So because you're better educated or because you have better control of emotions, it need not make you more morally, your decisions more moral, or how you make these decisions. Chief, this is a class. You come to the right place.
Yes.
So again, what affects our emotions? So for example, is this man more emotionally charged than this person? But how do your emotions and moods really vary? Why do they vary? And then they found that personality has an impact on your emotions. So you can have neurotic people. You can have people who are more, so when we talk about personality, we'll talk about neuroticism or emotionally unstable people. Have you met emotionally unstable people? Anybody? No? You can have them in your home. You can have them at the workplace. You understand what is emotionally. Maybe sometimes you are emotionally unstable because of the situation you are going through. So moods and emotions have a trait component. You can have a personality trait where you are emotionally unstable or neurotic. This becomes important, particularly when you're working in high risk areas. So if you're going to code in Java and somebody is emotionally unstable, this is a big deal. But if you're getting them to fly a plane, or you're putting this person on a ship where for 8 hours he's left alone, it could have serious consequences. So you might like to think about it. And that's why we are concerned about what kind of emotions that do people bring to the table, and really are they solid enough? Or for example, the armed forces, you don't want to give a gun to a guy, a submachine gun to a guy who's emotionally, you have some, suddenly you read in the paper, right? I mean, that guy. So really whether, he shot 15 people while they were sleeping. People who have emotional issues. So even you, suppose you are giving performance appraisal to an emotionally unstable person. I would suggest you sit near the door.
We actually get one of the HR person to sit with us.
Absolutely. The stronger the better, in case you're attacked or something. Yeah. There have been cases in the United States where somebody has pulled out a gun and shot manager and several other people. So, emotionally distraught people, you really don't know in what direction they are going to go, and it could become a problem in the workplace. Also, time of the day and day of the week. So we talked about day of the week. Towards say Fridays, people are emotionally happy. There's a long weekend coming up, but on Sunday afternoon. So I used to work in my much younger days. I used to work 2 months on board.
Sir, online you are not audible.
Hello, hello.
Can you hear?
Now it's okay, sir.
Yeah,
Okay,
now we
where
can
is
hear
this
you.
echo coming from?
Yes, yes.
Okay, how do you hear me now? No, it's still echoing. What is the echo? Hello? No, it's echoing. It's echoing? Yeah, it's echoing. See? I can hear. No, nothing. I'm not here. I'm not here also.
For us, it is clear, sir.
Yeah, for unfortunately here it's not. Yeah, just let's sort out this glitch. Huh? Just 2 minutes. So we were talking about um, um, yeah, we're talking about what affects emotions and moods, right? And you have whether stress levels, people who have high levels of stress are generally affected more by sort of shifts in emotions and moods. Even low levels of constant stress can worsen. So how do you mitigate that? Suppose you find somebody who's very moody or has emotional issues at work, and you know it's making them uh, a little difficult. What is this power situation? What's going on? So you can how do you mitigate this? How do you what advice would you give people who are having issues with stress which can affect their sort of emotions and moods? What advice would you give them? Take a training. Okay, you can sort of take a training course. What else? What else? What are some easy ways to alleviate stress and uplift your mood? Like what? Sports is a good outlet for sort of improving your mood. Fundamentally it might affect stress levels, but it might improve your mood. Yeah. uh, you can also get together with friends, maybe go and have a drink or whatever. Yeah, and sort of alleviate stress so that your mood improves. Social activities like physical, informal dining activities increase positive mood. There is also a school of thought which says that weather affects our moods. So you can actually, so I seriously get affected if the sun is not shining. Say if it is cloudy, very cloudy, and you have issues with, there's a lot of kind of thick cloud cover and it's very drizzly, then I don't feel, I'm not my normal self. I would like the sun shining. So I have a problem. I used to have a problem when I would go to, say, Scandinavian countries where 6 months of the year you don't see the sun. Yeah, you go to Norway or you go to Sweden, those countries where sunlight is an issue, and it can actually affect your mood. Exercise has a positive effect on your age. Of course, older people better control of their emotions and moods than younger people who seem to have serious issues with managing their emotions and moods. And that's why you say, they're not so mature or they're childish. What you mean actually is that they're not able to manage their emotions and moods in many senses. Women tend to be more emotional. They're not more emotional. They tend to be more emotionally expressive. So probably they cry more easily. If you give a bad feedback to women and so on and so forth, they seem to have issues with uh, expressing them, how they express those emotions or moods. So would you agree with that, or uh, that they're more expressive, women? Yes? Yeah. Okay. So again, I wanted to make this distinction. They are not more emotional. Men can actually be as emotional, but women seem to be more expressive. You can also have cultures like the British culture and so on and so forth, where the men are taught not to be very expressive, but you can have the French culture where they're pretty expressive and so on and so forth. Yeah. So so when you say that um, emotions affect decision making, that is one part of the story. You also have something called as emotional labor. So for example, you enter an aircraft, right? And you meet, one of the first people you meet is the flight steward, whether male or, what is the manner of the flight steward generally? Do they look angry? They look welcoming. Really, do they want to welcome you? They might want to give you a kick on the backside. Yeah. So therein lies the problem with many professions, the emotional labor part. Yeah. So you actually feel very angry, but, or you might feel unwelcoming, but you must pretend that you are something else. And say, for example, even customer front office people in, say, in a hotel, or people, say, working in many hospitality industries. A very good example is the flight steward, air hostess. I bumped into one of my students a couple of years back. She was telling me she's going to quit the job. So I asked her why. She said, very stressful because of this. They need to keep hiding their emotions all the time. And you have something called as a felt emotion, that is the individual's actual emotions. Displayed emotions are required or appropriate emotions. Yeah. And then you have something called as surface acting, that is hiding feelings and foregoing emotional expressions in response to display rules. So for example, you have to go to somebody has died, a death ceremony. Your boss has kicked the bucket and you hated your boss. But do you go and say, good thing this fellow died? Right? You sort of play the game. Yeah. And you sort of, you do what is called as surface acting. Surface acting always is a problem. You feel one thing, but you act differently. Eventually, what's the outcome of that? When you feel something, but you're acting differently, it may be noticeable or not, but what is the effect for you?
Mental stress.
Very right. Mental stress, which leads to eventual burnout. When you're talking about people who are burnt out, most of them have gone through this emotional labor or cognitive dissonance, where through their life they have felt one thing, but they have displayed something else. So, for example, you hate your boss, but on a daily basis, you have to pretend that you like the boss. And you know that it is stressful. So, what do you do? So, what can you do? You can change your job. But the market is very bad. There are no jobs available. You have taken huge loans because you wanted to buy that 2 crore apartment and you need this job. or find a job for the manager. But he doesn't want to go. He likes you. You don't like him, but he likes you. He wants to stay there. So what do? So what do? What's your strategy? Okay, you go swimming in the Jayanagar swimming pool, or go and have a drink or extra drink. But what actually, in real terms, in sensible terms, what can you do? You can one day sit on a Sunday, meditate, and say, okay, from tomorrow, I'm really going to start liking my boss. Maybe there are some good things about the guy. It's a strategy that you can actually adopt. Otherwise, I can assure you that one of these days you're going to collapse with stress. People have some good things and some not so good things. You've been focusing on the not so good things. Maybe you would like to focus on the better things, and you might like to do what is called the deep acting, trying to modify true inner feelings based on display rules. So you say that I have to pretend I have to like this guy. Let me find ways in which I can really like this person. Yeah. So it's a little difficult. It's not so easy because something called as your ego, or like Carl Jung said, your super ego, it gets in the way. It says you are being a hypocrite. Yeah. But if you want to stick in that job, and you really want to sort of survive the course and not feel too much of stress, then you better adopt some of these strategies. Otherwise, you're going to burn out. Have you seen people who are burnt out? I've seen several of them. Yeah, they seem to not be able to function. There are a lot of wheels spinning in their head, but there is no traction. Very interesting. Many of them want to come to academia, unfortunately, after having been burnt out in industry. Yeah, because they feel that they can. This is an easy job. You think this is an easy job? Very stressful again, because many times, so I might have to hide my true feelings many times when I'm teaching, and here I need to come across as somebody who's articulate and really happy and so on and so forth, concentrate on what's happening here, while things might not be so happy in the background. You might gonna have family issues, or you can have other issues. I might have fought with somebody on the way on the drive here, or you could have other things going on. Yeah, and you have something called as emotional dissonance. That is in, I think this is good. Yeah, send that Arvind here. Huh? Send him. You can have something called as emotional dissonance, that is inconsistencies between the emotions people feel and the emotions they again project. So similar thing to cognitive dissonance, emotional dissonance, emotional labor, and so on and so forth, where there is a divergence between what you feel and what you might feel that you're very smart. Yeah, but eventually it's going to get you, because that dissonance between the two is a problem. Yeah, and long-term emotional dissonance is a predictor for job burnout, decline in job performance, and lower job satisfaction, everything that you should be concerned about, either for yourself or for your. You understand what I'm talking about? Yes, no, maybe. Let me get some life out of you. Yeah. Otherwise, I feel that you are burnt out. Kind of, too much of organization behavior. So the AET, employees react emotionally to things that happen to them at work, and this influences job performance and satisfaction. Emotions provide valuable insights into how workplace events influence employee performance and satisfaction. Employee and managers shouldn't ignore emotions or the events that cause them, even when they appear minor, because they accumulate. They can accumulate, and then you can have trigger points. I used to take, if somebody used to tell me on board a ship, Captain, I feel like jumping overboard, I used to take it very, no, it's okay, go and sleep for 2 more hours is not a solution. Yeah, you ought to take trigger conversation or trigger points as to what really might happen in, when people give signs of emotional breakdown or burnout and so on and so forth. Is it your job as a manager? Yes, no, what? In today's world, unfortunately, it is. You can't say that your personal life is separate. If you're a manager, if you don't want to get into these things, there is no compulsion that you become a leader or a manager. You can be a normal employee, right? And you can actually do what you want to do. But if you get into these positions like being a leader or a manager, you better sort of be, you should be able to manage some of these things, which can be stressful. So they say one of the most stressful jobs in the world is being a psychiatrist, because you draw so much of negative emotions from other. If you don't like it, don't become a psychiatrist. But then if you are in that place, you jolly well sort of accumulate. And then we come to something that came up in the 1970s and today, which has acquired a lot of steam and traction, is emotional intelligence. That is a person's ability to perceive emotions in the self. And so do you feel, can you feel your own emotions? Are you angry now? Any of you is angry? No. Okay. So if you're angry, why are you angry? You have the cognition to even think about it. And if you're angry and you understand why you're angry, can you do something about it? Or you're going to continue like that? Or you have a colleague who appears angry, and you can figure out why that person is angry, and you are prepared to do something about it. That is emotional intelligence. Yeah. So the only way this is going to happen is when you deeply introspect. It's called self-reflection. Practice it a little bit. Set aside, say, half an hour every day and think about yourself. Think about what's happening in the office. What drives you? What drives other people? Because all of us, are going through life as if we are on some fast train. And then we jump in the morning, we come home in the evening, and we go through but reflecting, thinking about yourself is very, very important. And it makes you more emotionally intelligent. Yeah. So, emotional intelligence, a cascading model of emotional intelligence is conscientiousness. That is, it's not consciousness. Yeah. It is conscientiousness. So do you feel responsible towards yourself? Many of us are not responsible towards ourselves. That's why you go and after the second peg also you drink the third, fourth, fifth, and then you sort of um, sort of get drunk and fall by the roadside. Why? Because you're not responsible towards yourself. So conscientiousness is the biggest personality trait. We look at it when we do personality that employees look for. Are you responsible towards yourself and other people? So for example, last class I asked you what is your most important value in life. What did you say? So what? So you're saying that the most important thing for you in life is your family. So what should you do? Excellent. You chose your family as the biggest thing in your life. What does that mean? Thinking about, I'll think about my family all the time. What else? Absolutely. Are you just saying family, family, and then, spending all your money in a nearest bar and then floating around with somebody else while your wife and kid cries at home is not conscientiousness. Or there are some fellows who all the time talk about their organization, but they're sleeping or not adding any value. So again, they are not. So when organizations actually do interviews, they want to see how conscientious you are, how much you care about yourself and the organization. So when I used to go for my uh, Viva, the same Viva I was talking about, as every successive promotion, you have to go through a Viva. I found that old examiners would come and rotate, and they would come behind you. So I asked, when I became captain, I asked one of them, what is it that you go behind? They said, we wanted to check whether you polished the back of your shoes. So I said, whatever for? We wanted to see how responsible you are towards yourself. Yeah. Can you really take care of yourself? So conscientiousness today, my feeling at my age is that it is in short supply. People don't seem to care about themselves, nor do they care about anything else, but organizations struggle if they have such kind of people. So it is conscientiousness, perceive emotions in self and others, cognitive ability, that is understand the meaning of understand. So you're going through an emotion. Why? What is a trigger point? How do you deal with these trigger points? What makes you angry? Yeah. What is the solution? And then the emotional stability, regulate these emotions. What makes you people angry? You get angry anytime? No, never. Huh. What makes you angry? That is okay. What causes that irritation is the question. So more workload irritates you. Okay. Why do you think you go to work at all? So that they can pay you a salary. Beyond your limitation. What are your limitations? Therein lies the problem. Yeah. So discuss that with your. What else? What makes you angry? Normal things. Somebody cutting across you from the left hand side on the road. Yeah. So when I came back from the Netherlands, many things used to sort of. Somebody just randomly digging the road, freshly laid road next to your house, were things that bothered. But then slowly I have sort of reconciled myself to regulating emotions and understood that you can't really get angry about everybody and everything and then start disturbing yourself. So that's how it is. Does it make sense to you? So do follow these three steps: conscientiousness, cognitive ability, and emotional stability. So identify strategies for emotional regulations. There are many strategies and so on and so forth. Yeah, okay. So diversity in work groups may help us to regulate our emotions more consciously and effectively. So why am I so cognizant of different cultures and so on? Because I worked with different cultures. I commanded ships which had several different kinds of people, including Pakistanis, and I've had some interesting arguments with them about Kashmir and so on and so forth. And you can actually, another thing about emotional intelligence is to understand what are the trigger points for other people, and can you actually activate them to your advantage. Sounds a little political, but good people are able to manipulate other guys. Always happens in your home, right? When you're not actually following your parents, they emotionally sometimes, human trait, they figured it out without sitting in an OB class. But if you sit in an OB class and understand, maybe you can manipulate people better, because the manager's job is to get people to do work that they don't want to do. So his manager should pile him with more work, Make him do it, and then he goes home happily in
Classes
the
ನಡೀತಿದೆ ಇವಾಗಲೇ. MBA.
yeah. This chap is having a so you have sort of how do you sort of understand emotions and moods and manipulate other people to as well as yourself to perform better, add value, and sort of perform and sort of contribute to the team and so on and so forth. So like we said, emotional regulation techniques are surface acting. Surface acting is not good because it leads to eventual stress and burnout. Deep acting is much better, but it's difficult. So you don't like your boss, he's giving you a lot of work, but then you figure out this work is good for me. It's called rationalization. Yeah, he's teaching me a lot, and so on and so forth. So you sort of start liking the guy. Emotional suppression. You become like a zombie. I'm not going to let emotion. And it's kind of stone wall. You can do anything, but I'm not going to react. Difficult again, yeah. Emotional suppression. I'm not going to show any emotions at all. Cognitive reappraisal. Like what I did. I figured this is India. If you want to live in India happily, you need to ignore several people and several things. Yeah. So you need to have a cognitive reappraisal. That is, I will start sort of accepting many things that are happening. Social sharing, you can go and become a part. Suppose you drink heavily and you have a problem. What can you do? Of course, you can stop drinking, but that's easier said than done. What can you do? You can go and join something called as Alcoholics Anonymous. It's a group of people, all drunkards. I say it in a positive sense. Yeah, they all join together and then they discuss their stories, and it actually has a very therapeutic effect. You know, it sort of helps them to calm down and hopefully not drink too much, and they bring things under control. It's very difficult. What's the problem actually with drinking? It takes control of your brain. Yeah, and it also in severe cases takes control of your body. So you have these shakes and shivers and so on and so forth. You can see drunk people, if they don't get drink, then it's not like smoking. Smoking is more to do with the brain. Yeah, you can have violent reactions if you stop. I've known a couple of people. My wife was trying to counsel one, and the problem is that they show improvement and then suddenly they will revert. Yeah, so social sharing is very important. You can get into a social group and share your stories as to what's going on. And then mindfulness. I suggest that all of you do a course on mindfulness. There's an American called Seligman. Of course, mindfulness is something that has been talked in our um, you know texts from centuries. When you sort of sit and meditate on yourself and think about what is happening with you and then regulate. But there is a very nice Coursera course by a guy called Seligman. Look at it. It talks about mindfulness and how do you sort of look at your own life and introspect. We're all the time looking outwards, like the Western world. How big, how pretty is my wife? How big is my car? Can I get more money? Are people envious of me? What now they are realizing is that maybe there was some good sense in looking inwards, and you kind of start looking at introspecting a little bit. So you can do all these things to regulate your emotions and maybe your teammates and so on. The best option though is to recruit, finally Finally, why do you want to get into this mess? Filter out such people during the recruitment, and good organization like the armed forces and so on do exactly that. They have very tight recruitment processes, so you go there, say if you go to a service selection board, 35 people turn up, only maximum 3 will get selected. 2 is the general norm, 3 is you're pushing it actually. So they filter out at the time, the officer category. They're filtering out people at that level itself so that they don't have problems in doing all these things. But still, you will have funny guys who will come. So it's not a fail safe system. And the human brain really has not been worked out. Yeah. So, folk, I've been talking quite a bit despite 1 or 2 of those interruptions and so on and so forth. And I'm happy with myself. I still managed my anger. Yeah. And continued. Had this been 20 years ago on a ship, I would have fired somebody. So I had an incident when I was commanding a German ship, and my chief engineer, the guy who takes care of all the machinery, he was a German, Carsten. Yeah, he's a very interesting guy. His father had served in the German Navy as a submarine captain. His, and this fellow, they're very interesting people. So he and another guy were trying to fix a turbocharger. You may not know what's a turbocharger. It's a part of a engine. It's a massive thing, and there were 2 people were trying to fix it. With us, it will take about 15 people to do that job. So, so one of the important things on ships is how do you preserve your food, right? You buy a lot of food, and you have to take care of it because you are on long voyages. And so he called the electrical engineer and said, please go and check the reefer temperature. What is a temperature? So we generally maintain it at minus 60 or minus 70 degrees centigrade. So go and check the temperature because he was having some problem. So this guy said that, look, he came back. He comes back in about 5-6 minutes and says it is minus 50 or 60 or whatever. So this Carsten had a doubt. He left his job, went and checked, and found that he was lying. So he came up to my cabin and said, Captain, I want this guy off the ship in the next 1 day. It was not possible. We're in the middle of the Pacific or somewhere. So I don't care. I don't want him on my department. Get him off. So finally, after a lot of negotiation, I said, okay, when we reach the next port, we'll get him off and we'll get somebody there. But then I realized I can't do it to Arvind, my friend. Yeah, so you will continue with more glitches and so on and so forth. So rationalization is very important in how it happens. Okay, we'll take a quick break and we shall return in 10 minutes. Yeah, 10-15 minutes. Yeah. Guys online, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
We'll
sir.
take a quick break. Yeah.
Sure.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay.
Hello, check.
Recording. Yeah, guys online, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, we can
Yes,
hear
sir.
See
you.
my screen.
Yeah.
So we'll talk
Yes.
about something which is again very important. Just 10 minutes. Which is very important because, and I put that from the Upanishads just to indicate to you how um, ancient is our understanding of attitude and why we are so concerned about attitude. Why are we concerned about attitude? Just to indicate to you that maybe we have been talking about attitude from the last 4,000, 5,000 years. Why? Attitude represents the person. Who cares really? Why is attitude so important? Why should you be concerned with? We say, no, right? We tell people you have a bad attitude, you have a good attitude. Why? There's no connection between the two, or very tenuous connect. Everything is connected to everything else in the world, yeah, but really no direct connection. Why are we so concerned with attitudes? Okay, to put it better, good, correct. To put it more correctly, it determines our behavior. Our behavior is a function of our attitude. So, if we talk about um, attitudes are evaluative statements, either favorable or unfavorable, about objects, people, or events. And so, extending it further, if you had read that um, saying from the Upanishads, you would have found that they're talking about the will of a person, the attitude, the actions, and then what are the consequences. And we're concerned about actions and consequences in an organization. And that is why attitude is very important. So, people with a good attitude come with good behavioral patterns and good consequences, and it can be vice versa, right? So, attitudes are evaluative statements, either favorable or unfavorable, about objects, people, or. So, unfortunately, attitudes are also about not only about objects, but you can also have an attitude about a people, a set of people, a nationality. So, what do you all think about, say, people? Little extreme example, but say when you talk about people of, say, Pakistan, what do you think about them? So, a lot of Indians have negative, and similarly, they have. It's not that they are very loving towards all Indians. Yeah, they have a similar, so attitude towards, or an attitude you could have about, say, the French, the Japanese, and so on and so forth. So most people carry attitudes with them, and this can get in the way of work and so on and so forth. So uh, if you would ask generally a not very educated Kannadiga, what do you think about a lot of North Indians flowing into Bengaluru and working here? They would say, let's get rid of them. No, we don't want them. That's an attitude towards people. Now, I'm not going into the good and the bad about it. You can have whatever attitude you want, but it can get in the way of your. So next time you're sitting in an interview panel and you see a North Indian, your reaction is, let's not select this, or let me try to influence the selection. And this happens in all the places. You might have an experience where you went to another state and they didn't give you a job because you did not belong to their state, caste, religion, whatever. Yeah. So attitudes build from experience. And the more direct the experience is, the stronger is your attitude. Yeah. So attitudes are very important. But the good thing is that, again, with some self-reflection, some intelligence, some reading, you can mitigate your more idiotic attitudes about people in general, generalization, stereotyping, and so on and so forth. Otherwise, it's going to start getting in the way of your work. And many organizations hire people on attitude. Why? So when I went to the many years back, 1980, to the service selection board in Bhopal, I was what, in my teens, 15, 16 years old. My Hindi was poor. I landed up in Bhopal, and it was very different. I went to this army training cantonment area, and they put us through several tests. And I found that I came from a Christian missionary school, which explains my good English, by the way. But several people who came there, the other 32 people who came there, many of them came from a Sainik school. And they knew exactly what was going to happen in that selection process. And they were very difficult obstacles, which I actually was no. For example, one obstacle is you have to climb a tree, which was difficult for me in the first place. Once you climb the tree, you have to jump and catch hold of a hanging rope. And you have to swing like, Tarzan. You have to swing across about 30 feet and land on the other side. If you miss that, you're going to fall into a puddle of mud, wet mud. It's frightening. But I found that the Sainik school fellows did. So by the time there were 10 obstacles, by the time I did 4 in the allocated time, they had done twice. They did 20. Now, we all assumed that the guys who could not finish this were rejected. But when they selected finally, when the results were announced, the people who actually did not do these obstacles got in. 3 people, while the fellows who did 2 times and 3 times and all went home. So many of them protested. I remember very clearly, many of them protested and said, sir, these fellows, Madrasi log, they did not do this. And that colonel who was there, he said, we are not hiring monkeys for the army. We are hiring on attitude. Skills we will teach them. How to fire a gun can be taught. How to climb a tree can be taught. But you can't change attitude easily. Once it's there, it's there. So that is why it is so critically important. And many organizations hire on attitude because they believe, especially young people, because they believe skills can be taught to you, right? And please be very well aware that you can't have a poor attitude and then get into an organization and hope to survive. Yeah. And I want to show you a video about the Taj hotels, actually, about attitude. There's also, I'll send you the article. You can read it once I send it to you. But let's watch the video. Guys online, can you hear me? It's a rather important
sir.
video.
Yes, yes.
So
Yes,
let's-
sir.
Very good. Excellent. I like the spirit and the energy. Not this. No, this is a Taj. This one. Yeah. So this is actually a Harvard talk, a very famous professor. So let's listen to him, please.
On the 26th of November 2008, as you just heard, a group of 10 terrorists attacked the city of Mumbai, what used to be called Bombay, in India. They broke up into teams to attack about a dozen different locations. One of those locations was the iconic, beautiful, 103-year-old Taj Mahal Palace Hotel in South Bombay. For 3 nights, 2 days, there was absolute havoc in that hotel. Guests were terrorized, people wounded, shot, killed. This group of terrorists with automatic weapons, plastic explosives and grenades in backpacks roamed freely through this old hotel. Many of us, many of you, witnessed or saw some of that coverage on television at home. Let's take a closer look.
The evening of November 26, 2008, was a typical busy Wednesday for the Taj. More than 500 guests were registered at the hotel. Another 500 to 600 were attending functions in banquet halls or sitting down to dinner in the hotel's 10 restaurants. Shortly after 9 p.m., an explosion rocked the Leopold Cafe just around the corner, less than 200 meters from the Taj. 2 young men pulled out automatic weapons and began firing. Crowds at the Gateway of India and along the street in front of the Taj panicked, many rushing the doors of the hotel. In the ensuing chaos, 2 heavily armed terrorists circumvented the metal detectors and entered the lobby. They were soon joined by the 2 attackers from the Leopold, who broke through a back door.
9:35 or 9:40 was the first call I got from one of my chefs. And I think some shooting is taking place. A person has been shot dead outside my restaurant. Then we heard another gunshot, and I told him on the phone only, I said, just close all the kitchens, all the restaurant doors.
They were banging the door. They were alerting everyone, come out, otherwise we'll shoot you. There were few guests who, they were scared and they came out by putting their hands up, and they started hitting them, they started harassing them. It was horrible.
The situation, the entire scenario was very scary. We couldn't judge at that time what is exactly happening in the hotel.
It was a literally war situation. You can hear grenade lobbing around. You can hear the gunshot also.
We did not know the scale of the attack. We did not know what exactly was going on, where they were at that moment. And there was total chaos. My colleagues were trapped with guests in various places, asking me what should we do next.
So picture what's happening inside that hotel. There are 500 guests who are registered at that hotel this night of 26th November. There are an additional 600 or so guests who are in various restaurants, attending various banquets and functions. There are about 600 or so staff members on duty that night. Young people, many of them very young, 20, 30-year-old. Some of them these staff members had only been working for a few years at this hotel. Many of them fathers and mothers, the sole breadwinners in their families with children at home waiting for them. One of the things, we don't know a lot about the detail about what happened there, but one of the things we do know is that all 600 of these employees knew all the back routes. They knew the exits, they knew the entrances, they knew the hallways, the kitchen galleys. In other words, they knew how to get out and how to get out fast. All the research we have in psychology would tell us that the natural human instinct at a time of terror like this is to flee. So think about it, what you would do. So when I teach this case study at Harvard, I ask my students, I say, how many of these employees do you think fled, and how many of them do you think stayed? And they'll hazard guesses, and the maximum, they say, that would stay would be maybe a quarter, 150 or so. You know, but that's the maximum. Everybody who can run away will run away. Well, the truth of the matter is that nobody ran away. They all stayed. In fact, some of them not only stayed, they helped guests out and came back in to help more guests. It's an amazing story. These are some of their stories.
The staff of the Taj stayed on duty throughout the siege, calming frightened guests and assisting in their rescue. Many even came back inside after leading guests out of the building. Members of the hotel's team of telephone operators, originally evacuated, voluntarily returned to their stations and stayed on all night.
They became the hub of communication at that point. They were the ones calling every single guest room, talking to the guests and telling them to stay in, don't step out, lock your door.
As the terrorists roamed the halls, telephone operators instructed trapped guests to pull their key cards to turn off the illuminated occupied button in the hallway outside their doors.
The attack started at 9:30 in the evening. Till 4 o'clock they were answering guest calls. I think that speaks a lot for a hotel under attack.
Among the guests at the Taj that night were members of the Global Board of Directors and senior management team of Unilever, who had gathered along with their spouses to honor incoming and outgoing CEOs.
So we had this really elaborate 7-course meal, and that was sort of the setting, the mood. There was warmth, there was laughter, there was a perfect setting for a nostalgic farewell and a perfect setting for a nice welcome. And I heard what seemed to me, which is an untrained ear, like firecrackers in the hotel.
We started getting these text messages and phone calls. There were some gunmen on the loose. The only logical thing to do was to close the doors and just stay put.
Malika came to us and said, we think there's a problem. We're not sure what exactly it is, but I request all of you to be on the ground right now. The level of calm and composure that the staff displayed was amazing. It was absolutely amazing, because they had the presence of mind to even advise us, saying, couples, please separate, don't stay at the same place, just be in different corners of the room.
65 lives at stake, so can't take a chance. So obviously we were in touch with security all the time and had a lot of alcohol in the room. So that helped a little.
This went on the whole night. We were on the floor with our hearts in our mouths, with debris falling all around us, the noises of firecrackers all around. And all through, the staff kept their composure, kept coming to us saying, do you want some water? Do you want something?
Well, I was scared, but there was something more important to be done.
And this went on till 4 or 5 in the morning when the room filled with smoke. So we had no choice but to find a way to escape.
The entire corridor outside the hall was on fire. So there was no way we could get out. The fire guys were outside and they were dousing the fire on the 6th floor. And we happened to see Mr. Kang downstairs as well. So he sort of ushered the fire guys to us.
We sort of climbed onto the ledge and did some stuff which in today's normal day I wouldn't be able to do, but we sort of came onto the ledge, climbed down to the ladders which by then the fire brigade people had come. The staff insisted that we would go first, guests would go first. And they kept like that till all of us had come down and then they all came down.
Well, in a way, because I was there, I was looking after the function, I was responsible. I could have been the youngest in the room, and I know at one point in time I was the youngest in the room, but I was still doing my job.
The easiest thing for our staff to do at that point in time was to drop whatever they were doing and run out of the hotel. Not one did that. Not one.
I come from an army background, not myself, but my father, he retired as a general in the army. And he often used to say, when I was even appointed here as the general manager, he used to often tell me that you are now like the captain of the ship. And I think that's the way you think, that you are the captain of the ship, and you have to be the last one to leave, and if it sinks, you sink with it.
At some point, our kitchen brigade decided that it looked like a lull in the thing and they could be taken out from the back of the kitchen through the fire exit to the back road. And our chefs had formed a human chain to escort people in the darkness down those stairs. And as hundreds of them were being evacuated, somehow 2 of those terrorists got to know that this was happening. And the terrorists arrived there and saw these chefs lined up, herding people away, and there was mayhem. They cut loose, and that's where we lost our biggest numbers there. We had 5 or 6 of our chefs gunned down, but they took the bullets.
Said that they risked their lives in just making sure that the guests were safe.
I don't think we would have made it out of the hotel without the support, the assurance, the constant service orientation that the staff provided, without doubt, which is why we will continue to be so grateful to them.
I can't explain it. There were no manuals, there were no instructions for what should be done in the circumstances. So what seems to have happened is individuals, from the waiters to the managers of the restaurants, all had this goal of let's get the guests to safety.
To reiterate, 500 registered guests, 600 guests in restaurants and banquets like that Unilever Boer event that you just heard about. 600 employees. So that's 1,700 people that night. Of those 1,700, over 1,600 escaped safely. Only 34 people died. Of those 34, fully half were staff members of the hotel. So when we were working on this case study, I asked senior management how this happened, why this happened, what explains the behavior of their staff. And these are young people. Malika Jagat, the banquet manager for the Unilever event, whom you saw speaking, 24 years old. What explains it? And you heard, they can't explain it. Senior management, Mr. Ratan Tata, head of the Tata group of companies, they own the Taj hotels, he couldn't explain it. So I teach this at Harvard. I bring this case study back and I teach this at the Harvard Business School as a case study of leadership from below. You know, we teach usually about leadership as being something from the top that filters down. This is leadership from below. It's just amazing. And I asked my students, how do you explain it? And they have plausible explanations for the behavior of the employees. Some of them say, well, it must be the culture, the national culture of India. You know, there must be something in the value system there that explains it. And in fact, there is. It turns out that there is a value or a belief that says a guest is to be treated like God. When a guest enters your home, treat her or him like God. Atiti Devo Bhava in Sanskrit. Other students say, no, 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 it's not national culture, it's corporate culture. If the Taj Hotels is owned by this family, the Tata Group, they have a long history in India of very benevolent human resource policies, a family of integrity in their business dealings. It's the corporate culture. And others say, no, it's not that. This happened at a hotel. It's the industry culture. It's hospitality. Employees are trained to serve customers. So that's what's going on. All of these are very plausible. So along with another colleague, I decided to go back into the Taj Hotel company records to try to understand their human resource policy. Who were these people? Who were this staff? Where did they find them? How did they recruit them? How did they motivate them? How did they train them? And I learned lots of really, really intriguing things. Let me share, in the interest of time, just 3 of them with you. First, about recruiting. You know, they recruit their frontline employees from high schools, not from the major cities, not from Bombay or Delhi or Calcutta or Madras. They recruit them from small towns. Haldia, Chandigarh, Nashik, Tiruchirappalli, small towns. And they recruit students, graduating students, for attitude, not grades. They ask their headmasters or their teachers, who are the students that you teach who have the most respect for older people, for their parents, for the teachers? They're not looking for the students who do the best in grades, but rather for attitude. Then training. This is fascinating. You know, you've heard of brand ambassadors. Lots of companies, many organizations perhaps that you represent, train their frontline staff to be ambassadors for the brand, for the company. You know what they do at the Taj Hotels? They train their frontline employees to be ambassadors for the customer, for the guest. It's very different. It's counterintuitive. They call them guest ambassadors. They believe frontline employees should be the voice of the client, of the customer, of the guest to the company. And third, and perhaps most importantly, their motivation system, their reward system, incentives, is not just monetary. They pay about average, little above average in that hotel sector in India. But they reward people with recognition, personal recognition. So when an employee does something that delights customers and the guest writes a note, within 48 hours that employee is recognized. 48 hours. They don't have to wait for a Diwali or a Christmas bonus. It happens within 48 hours. Amazing. In fact, they won the International Hermes Award for an innovation in human resource management for this STARS program. So let me close by asking you to think a little bit about the lessons that you take away from this company far away on the other side of the world, the things that we can learn here in America, that we can bring home, that we can scale to American businesses, American organizations. Things like the way customers are treated, building a customer-centric, guest-centric corporate culture, organizational culture, rethinking the relationship, the contract between employer and employee. And finally, let me close by saying this is an amazing, inspirational story, that something that was supposed to be a symbol of terrorism is today a beacon of hope. Thank you.
Yeah. So it's a very interesting case which you can actually read, and Imtiaz will just go back to that.
Career just by using public speaking skills. I have worked alongside with legends like Tony Robbins, Robert Kiyosaki.
Right. So I hope you can think about that talk, TED talk by Rohit Deshpande. He's fairly famous OB professor at Harvard Business School. I'll send you the article. You can also read it and think about it on attitude. So today, more and more people are saying that recruit on attitude. You can teach people the skills. And in several companies, even large ones like Google and so on and so forth, they stop bothering about your degree or your marks 5 years after you've passed out of your college. So marks don't seem to actually matter so much that people seem to think it does. Yeah. Attitudes are made up of three components. The ABC component, that is the affective, the feeling, the behavioral, and the cognitive. So actually we might like to look at it as ACB, the feeling component. So for example, I was expecting a promotion. I did not get the promotion. So that's the feeling part of it. I dislike my supervisor. Why? Because he or she did not give me a. So what do you internalize when that happens? What do you internalize? What happens in your head? So you can say my supervisor gave a promotion to a co-worker who deserved it less than I did. My supervisor is not fair. So most of us attribute motives. So it's called attribution theory, where everything good happens, it's because of whom? Suppose something good happens. It's because of whom? Myself. Yeah. But if something bad happens, it's because of my parents, my friends, my boss. So attribution. So human beings attribute whatever not good happens to them to somebody else, and that's how we retain our mental sanity. So I remember that when we used to do our exams, if I passed, when we came out, we would tell everybody, I passed. Suppose I failed, you would say the examiner failed me. Yeah, it's pretty interesting, but very common. So you then have the cognitive feeling where you attribute something to your boss, and then the behavior, I am going to leave the organization and go and join somewhere else, because that is the action part. So attitude always leads to an action or behavior, and that is why it is so important, because if attitudes are not managed properly, then you can have actually serious issues in an organization, and it becomes something that is very important to all of us. You can have people with poor attitudes who come in and not add value at all. But what do you think about this? I also want to make a disclaimer. What do you think about this talk? So should you hire only on attitude? So please also understand that you can't build a nuclear reactor with attitude. Having a good attitude is good. You also need people with robust skills in those kind of jobs. For example, you can't fly a plane on attitude. You can't navigate a ship on attitude. You can't sort of, just because I have a good attitude, I can't deliver a great lecture. Yeah. You also need the skills and the cognition or the knowledge for you to sort of deliver it. So the important question that we're discussing here is behavior stems from an attitude, and we behave because of the attitude we carry. The question that needs to be also asked is, can our behavior change our attitude? So we're looking at it from one direction. I'm asking you to look at it from another direction. Can a set of events or a behavior change an attitude? Think about it. Is it possible? So this guy called Leon Festinger, Festinger said that it actually happens. So for example, I said that so I gave you an example of how all of us, how many of you, not me, because I have had this experience, say have an attitude. You ask a normal Indian on the roadside, what do you think of people in Pakistan? And they have an attitude, right? But you might actually have a good experience. many times in Dubai, my security were Pakistanis. So I actually mitigate my attitude a little bit because I have had first-hand experience in meeting these fellows. Yeah. So actually, sometimes your behavior in event can shift your attitude, right? So you also, for example, I know of several people who used to say that America is a useless country, they have no culture, everybody divorces each other, they drink a lot, and so on and so forth. Then their children would go and live in America, and this person would be the part of the the IAS service. You know what's IAS? Indian IR service. So their children have children, and then they go there to look after those kids and work as an IR and all that. And then they'll come back, and their whole attitude towards America has now changed because they've had a first hand. They find that everybody doesn't drink. They also have a culture, their own culture. There are decent people, like there are decent people in India. There are bad people there, like there are bad people here, and so on and so forth. So there is a change in attitude because of a behavior. Yeah. So you must understand that these are very interesting things about attitude, and we'll look at why we are talking so much about attitude is because it affects how much of job satisfaction we have. And job satisfaction is important because it starts impacting the value addition that we bring to the table in an organization. People who are disgruntled, people who are unhappy can never be satisfied with their. Having said that, you can also have people who are disgruntled and dissatisfied doing good work. Yeah? But the fact of the matter is that they might sooner than later leave your organization and go and join your competitor, which again is a thing that organizations need to look at whether it's fine. So you don't want also donkeys hanging around your organization, right? Sometimes it's good to let people go if they're not really performing and so on. So these are complex permutations and combinations. But also, let's quickly look at what affects an attitude. So the attitude's importance. How important is this attitude? How important is it to you as to what happens in another country to shape your attitude? Suppose you're not concerned. I'm really not concerned what happens in another country. I am concerned about Bengaluru, whether the train comes on time, how much it rains, whether I get water, and whether I have a job, and so on and so forth. So this attitude doesn't concern you at all. So, but if it does, then it's a important part of the whole scheme of things. For example, my attitude in running the executive MBA program is that I want excellence. So I get annoyed when things don't go according to plan. Yeah. So that's an attitude that I bring to the table. Suppose I am like many other people and they say that I don't care really, students come, let them come. Things break down, let it break down. We'll get some useless professor who doesn't know what. That can also be an attitude. But then that is not an important thing for me. So the attitude's importance. How much of it is corresponding to your behavior? So the more important it is, the more behavioral trends you will find in terms of how people behave. Yeah. So I hope you understand what I'm saying. I'm not sure. How important is an attitude to people? How strong an attitude is depends on how important it is to them. Actually, I've got a small video clip. We'll see. I want to play something else also. Anyway, one second. So the accessibility. How easily can you? Remember, so for example, let me illustrate this with a story. So my son, when he was a young boy, one day came home and said that older boys in the bus were bullying him. What is bullying? They would sort of beat him a little bit, take his lunchbox, throw it across the bus, and so on and so forth. So that was classic bullying. So he was say 8 years old, they were 12 years old or much older. When you're 12 and 8, it's a big difference. Yeah. So how would you react generally? So again, classic attitude with what, how do you, when you view the situation, what would you do? Complain to the teacher. What, yeah, what else? Stop going to school. Good avoidance is a good thing. Conflict management. Avoid conflict. But doesn't take the problem away. What else would you do? Huh? Talk to those boys. Very good, yes. What else can you do? Discuss with the boys' parents. Okay, very good, yes. Form your own gang. Okay. So, you know, this was many years ago, and I was not as calm as I am now. So I did all the things that you said, and eventually took one stick and went to the bus and told them that I'm going to thrash you. It stopped. Yeah, the bullying stopped because they were really scared, and that too I carried this captain tag, and all of them knew, and they knew that I will execute that thrashing. So it stopped. But the point here is not about that. It's not about the story. The point is what made me behave in this fashion. So actually, many of these things have some historical basis. So I can remember my own school where we would get bullied by older boys and there was no defense. There was nobody who would come to our assistance or rescue, and that has remained. So I have this pathological hatred towards bullies. I will go after bullies anywhere, whether it is my business or not. Yeah, and it got, so the point I'm trying to make is that how important is the attitude. So I, because of my attitude towards bullies, I reacted in this extreme fashion, and so attitudes are very important. People with strong attitudes can actually have strong behavioral outcomes, and unfortunately you don't know in an interview. You don't really know what is going through their head. So the last point, whether a person has direct experience with the attitude. Why did I react like that? Because I had direct experience. And why did I really thrash those two boys? No, because of probably this reason, social pressure. At the corner of my brain, it still occurred to me that the social impact of me, and it made me no difference from those bullies. After all, I was older. Yeah. So the social pressure kept me. If there is no social pressure, there would be chaos on the. Suppose there is no impact, no social, people would be broken families and so on. India, you think all people who are staying in marriages are happy? Why do they stay in marriages? Yeah, because of social pressure. Otherwise, they would have scooted long time back in different directions. And you're seeing it more and more as women become economically more independent. They're putting up less nonsense, or maybe men are putting up with less nonsense, and you can see broken families and so on and so forth. So some of the major job attitudes are job satisfaction, job involvement. But before that, I also want to sort of play you another very interesting clip. This was from a movie in the 1995, won an Oscar, and classic. And just imagine we are still playing clip from that movie 30 years later. And I watched it, of course, as a young guy when it came, but it has stayed for several years, very popular. It's played in several B schools. I just want to make a disclaimer. It has one or two not colorful language. So which words I'm sure all of you have heard before. So please stay with us and I hope I'm not hurting your sensibilities. Yeah. What do you say, Madam Chandrakala? Is okay, no? Yeah, okay, right. Huh. So guys online, we're just taking a playing another video. Yeah. No, that one, that one, this one. So, no, इम्तियाज, इसके पहले एक और था, और एक, stop, go back. Yeah, the other one, no, the other one, no, the other one. There's, see, one is this, no, not that one. The next one. That one. Then go to the next one. This one. How many minutes is this? No, not this. 3, yeah? Yeah, okay, play this. First you play this, then we'll play the other one. Yeah. Thank you.
I called an open meeting of this institution this morning because the incident that occurred this Tuesday last describes an issue.
So this is about a school, and it's an upmarket school. The headmaster, there's a disciplinary issue. He has been sort of very badly insulted, so he's angry, and he has now to take some appropriate action because he has to protect the school. And this is the whole scene. You might have watched this. Play, please.
This Tuesday.
Okay, now we play the next one. So, any of you have seen this movie? Should watch. It's a fascinating.
What if you could grab the best career opportunity?
Thanks. Yeah. Fascinating speech by the great Al Pacino. Yeah. So the reason I played this was just to show you that different people can come. Just thanks. Full screen. Several different people come with different attitudes. Headmaster had one way of looking at things. The colonel had a different way of looking at things. Yeah. And that's unfortunately the issue with attitudes, because we bring it to the table and then expect everybody else to share our beliefs, systems, and attitudes, which need not be. What do you think here? So the problem here was that this boy has witnessed a crime, which his classmates did, and he is not willing to leak out their names. Was it right or wrong? So he also says that I'm not here to discuss the right and wrong of it. I'm not here to discuss the moral issue. I'm here to discuss that the boy is not ready to disclose the names of his classmates, which is a sign of good character or integrity. Again, you can discuss that in several ways. But you must understand that people carry strong attitudes about several things. And that's why I always discourage people from discussing two things, which are what? Two things, when they're discussed, can never end in a rational agreement. Politics and religion. Yeah, because people have strong attitudes, which sort of are not based exactly on logic. Yeah. So, so some of the major job attitudes that you will see are things like organizational commitment. What is that? Identifying with a particular. So do you have strong organizational commitment? Not many. In today's world, people are more sort of, they're not really, they don't have strong attitudes about the place they work in. They might still have attitudes towards, strong attitude towards the profession they are in. So I want to be a software engineer. I want to be a professor. I want to be I want to be a manufacturer. I want to manufacture something, and so on and so forth, but not necessarily towards an organization. There are very few. Maybe you will find it in the armed forces where somebody is proud to be a member of the armed forces. Somebody might take great pride in being in IIM Bangalore, or maybe the Indian Institute of Science, or so on and so forth. What do you guys think? Is there a strong attitudinal commitment towards an organization, your own organization? Do you feel great pride in being there? Or it doesn't matter? Tomorrow, somebody pays me more, I'll move on. What do we say? Honest answer. I'm present, your present company. That's what I'm asking. Huh? Not in previous company. This company, yes. Okay, what else? All of you the same? Or you would move if somebody paid you more? Fair enough. Yeah. So, but if you ask somebody, say, serving in the army, they may not give you an exactly same answer. They have great pride in being part of that system. Yeah. And so on and so forth. So, identifying with a particular organization and its goals and wishing you. So, you want people like that. You want people who identify. So, in the IT industry, I see that to an extent with the old Infoscience. They had great pride in connecting with their, or people who worked, say, in Larsen and Toubro, but not, or the Tatas, but not too many organizations instilled that kind of pride in their people. You want people like that. Employees who are committed will be less likely to engage in work withdrawal, even if they are dissatisfied, because they have a sense of organizational loyalty, which is very important. And then, how does this happen? So perceived organizational support. How much of support do you think? So for example, during the COVID times, were you looked after by your organization or not? Matters. How many of you got 100% support, or were you told, no, you'll have to take pay cut, or worse, fired, or worse, nobody really cared about you? So how do you perceive your organization in terms of, so if you go to, say, ask a Googler, he will say, my organization will really take care of me. I am very clear about it. I am sure. So for example, I think I mentioned in the last class, the minute this anti-abortion laws were passed in the US, the same evening, Google sent out a message to all their women that you can go and work anywhere across the United States you want. You can go to a more friendly state and work. If you don't like to work in a state like Texas or Kansas or one of those states which upheld that anti-abortion law, go and work in California or go and work in New York or somewhere else where the laws don't apply. So perceived organizational support. So in fact, I think in 2011 or 12, one of the senior guys from the Taj hotels had visited our campus, and he was saying that they had decided in 2009 that each family of persons who had died in the Taj would get some 18 lakhs or something. And when the bill went to Ratan Tata for the final signature, he said, let's pay them 36 lakhs. So whatever they were supposed to get, he multiplied it by 2. So that is organizational support. And what is important is how much of it you believe that it is there for you, and that instills an attitude towards your organization in terms of commitment, of perceived commitment, organization commitment behavior. And then you have, all of you know what is employee engagement and so on and so forth. Yeah. So so fundamentally why we are discussing this is because attitude has a major impact on job And like I told you, job satisfaction is important because if people are dissatisfied, it can result in several behaviors. One is withdrawal, they work less. In the worst case, they can be sort of violent, and you can have cases of where they are sabotaging something in your organization, leaking secrets, creating gossip, and so on. All of this a continuum of dysfunctional. You understand dysfunctional behavior? So how difficult is it to say that I saw the boss and his secretary in Meenakshi Mall having a good time? Gossip. Not true at all, but damaging. Yeah, which can damage an organization. And today many organizations are cognizant of gossip and they will take appropriate. You can't spread gossip and hope to get away with it. Just like that. Yeah. So um, a positive feeling about a job resulting from an evaluation of its characteristics. Two approaches for measuring job satisfaction are, so you can carry out a survey. All of you might have gone through job satisfaction survey, or they hire Gallup to come and conduct a job satisfaction survey, and then they ask you various questions. Many of you tick all the fives or tick all the ones and then go home in the evening. Do take them seriously because organizations are trying to find out how satisfied their employees are or are not. Yeah. So some of the causes of job satisfaction are job conditions. Of course, if you give people bad conditions, they are going to be reasonably dissatisfied. If you pay them poorly, and like our friend here said, makes him work a lot, but doesn't he think in his mind, then you're going to be job conditions are not great. And of course, personality. Personality, unfortunately, has a major impact on attitude. And there are some people who are perennially dissatisfied. I'm sure you met some of them. Yeah. Whatever you do, there you cannot satisfy. You can actually take them to the moon and bring them back also. They are still. Then they'll say, why didn't you take me to Mars? Yeah. If you give them a pay hike of 10,000 rupees, they'll say, why didn't you give me 20,000 rupees? So you cannot do anything for those kind of people. And what you need to do is to keep them out at the interview stage, if you can detect it. Because disgruntled people who are never satisfied. So that's why when if you do this course on mindfulness, Seligman will tell you, be grateful for what you have. Once in a way, reflect with gratitude. You're still alive. You're sitting in a wonderful university, listening to a great professor. Yeah. So show gratitude rather than grumbling all the time, because if you're by nature a disgruntled person, and disgruntled people have an issue with what is called as the core self-evaluation. That is, they are unhappy themselves. When they look in the mirror in the morning, when they get up and they want to brush their teeth, they don't like what they see. Yeah. So if you are one such character, then think about it. Because if you don't like yourself, you're going to have an issue with everybody and everything else. So core self-evaluation, unfortunately, unless you carry out extensive psychometric tests, you can't keep such people out of your, you don't know. Because they have good technical skills, or they speak well, or they smile a lot, they will get into your system. And then they will cause havoc. Yeah. So, so what are some of the outcomes of job satisfaction? Of course, job performance, they add value. OCB is very important. What is OCB? OCB is like people in the Taj. They could have run away. Did they run? So it's called organization commitment behavior. You want such kinds of people. There are several examples of organization commitment. So there's this company called Nordstrom. Have you heard of it? Unlikely. It's not there in India. One of my favorite stores whenever I go to the US. They are an upmarket clothing shop. They sell all the top brands. If you want to buy, say, a Versace, or you want to buy Hugo Boss, or all those things, you go to Nordstrom. And the good thing about Nordstrom, like a good Indian, I find is they will give massive discounts. You can get a Hugo Boss suit at 60% off, which is slightly maybe 6 months old or 8 months old. So whenever I go to the US, I head to Nordstrom. But this story is not about me. This story is about a set of 4 people, and apparently they were driving down the road, and one of the tires burst. And the car, high-speed car, tires burst. You know what happens to the car, right? It goes here and there. So the father got down, looked at it, was very unhappy, angry, and then he found a Nordstrom shop. They stormed in, and the manager came. They're all suited, booted nicely, sophisticated people. So he said that, look, you guys are terrible. You don't do your job properly. So the manager said, sir, please calm down. Tell me what's the problem. So he said, one of the tires burst. I paid a lot of money, but it burst. It endangered my family. And you guys are the cause. So the manager said, okay, you please sit down. I'll see what I can do. So they have nice lounges. So they made them sit there. They served them something to eat and drink. The children were playing there. In half an hour, he came back and said, okay, sir, your tires have been checked. We have replaced the faulty one. And so by this time, the gentleman also had calmed down, and he said, okay, nothing personal against you, but really Nordstrom shouldn't do this. So the manager said, yes, we appreciate it. Your car is ready. While he was leaving, the manager said, I just want to let you know that Nordstrom does not sell tires. Yeah, and this story has great meaning. So if they don't sell tires and they have not sold this man the tire, why did he change the tire? The point is that Nordstrom believes that anybody's customer is their customer. Yeah? They have a very overarching view of customers. And they say that customer anywhere is Nordstrom's. So the experience you get in a Nordstrom store is brilliant. Yeah? If ever you have an opportunity, please do visit one of those stores and see what happens there. But the point is, this manager also need not have done this, but it reflects how deeply he is involved with the core values of that particular. Another great story is when the race in space. So the 1950s, after the Second World War, you may or may not know, many of Germany's rocket scientists were either went to the Soviet Union or to the United States. And because both wanted the mastery of space, and the Russians were winning every battle. So the first man in space was Colonel Yuri Gagarin, the woman Valentina Tereshkova. They sent one monkey into space also, one dog into space. And they were laughing at the Americans. So John F. Kennedy in 1959 or 1960 said that the first man on the moon will be an American. And it was a stunned silence because the Americans were nowhere close to it. And he went on to say, within the 1960s, this man will be on the moon, and he will be planting an American flag on the moon. So NASA was set up, and so 1961, Kennedy visits NASA, and he's walking down, and he sees one chaprasi. Yeah, he's sweeping the floor. Did I tell you the story? He's sweeping the floor, and so America, more egalitarian, presidents talk to the chaprasi, and so on and so forth. Again, part of their culture. So the president asked the man that, so what do you do? He could see. He was chaprasi, but still he asked him, what do you do in NASA? So this chaprasi told him, I am helping to put a man on the moon. He did not tell him I'm a chaprasi. He didn't say I'm sweeping the floor. He told him I am helping to. How many of you remember your vision statement of your own company? I'm sure you don't even know where that board is. But this guy, being the probably the lowermost employee, had internalized the vision of, and that is organization commitment behavior. When your lowermost employee is able to understand your vision and he is able to sort of bring it into play when required, because it's the guiding force. And I'm not surprised that the Americans had Neil Armstrong stepped on the moon in 1969 and planted the American flag on the moon. So it's very important to have people who have a strong sense of organization, commitment, behavior, and continuing. They have strong customer satisfaction, feedbacks, and they also have good, which should be important to all of us. They are satisfied with their life in general. Okay, so gentlemen, I'm going to stop there. And any questions from anybody on anything regarding Dayanand Sagar and the program? Guys online, any questions?
No, Captain.
No questions. Okay. How is the assignment going? Assignment 1? All of you who have just joined, please pay cognizance to assignments. They are tough assignments. Madam, what's your name? Okay. Where do you work? Okay. So all of you who have just joined, you also see what that assignment is and start getting used to it. Yeah, for the next 17 months, you are going to have difficult assignments. I'm sure your counselor did not tell you that. But they're going to test you. Groups are formed, right? You know your group members and so on. Have you met them? Should, because the assignment 2 is also will test you. And what you have on your side is time. So everything has been given to you well in advance. There is no last minute stuff. So please pay attention to what's going on. Any other questions? No? If there are no questions, let's move on in life and have lunch and so on. Yeah. Guys online, thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
me.